So I mentioned that the theme of this morning is light. And June will talk about Jesus saying, I am the light of the world. And Jesus also says, you are the light of the world. And I was wondering what kind of light that might be. So I brought a few of them along. Let's start with this one. And this isn't in any way just a way of persuading Holly that these are valuable worship resources rather than toys. So this is a fairly simple one, and if I do the right thing, hopefully, there we go. It's a simple par light, and it illuminates. If something is in the dark, it reveals it. Where God is unknown, a light can reveal God's love. Okay. How about this? This doesn't look like a light at all, but I'll do it onto myself just so that it's easier for folks on Zoom to see. It can draw attention to a particular point. Yes, it is just about visible. Where there is injustice, we can focus on it, focus the attention of the world. I'm not going to turn this one on because it goes all over the place. This one's quite fun because it spins round and it spins up and down. It's all over the place. We can follow its movement just like we follow the light of Christ. But if nothing controls it, if I did turn it on and put it onto automatic mode, it would go all over the place and that wouldn't be any use at all. The Junior Church are going to be thinking later on about following the light of Christ. If we're asking to be a light and asking people to follow, we need to be pointing where God calls us. And one final one. Again, this doesn't look much like a light, does it? What do you think it'll do? Any thoughts? William? Any idea what kind of light this is? Well, let me show you. And I apologise, folks on Zoom. I haven't managed to work out a way that you'll be able to see this. But it's a laser. And it's currently showing, for those on Zoom, this is currently showing a little dolphin. And then it'll switch over in a minute to a little ostrich. And there's all kinds of things. There's Winnie the Pooh. I stress, not a toy. It can draw pictures. Sometimes it can be hard to understand God, so a picture, either a work of art, or a laser, or a painting, or a word picture, the way we describe God, the poems we have about God, all of this can help to glimpse God better. So when you hear, you are the light of the world, what kind of light are you going to be? We talk often in church about how there are different forms of service. So what kind of light are you? And how does Jesus act as a light for you?
Isaiah chapter 19, starting at verse 16. Egypt will worship the Lord. A time is coming when the people of Egypt will be as timid as women. They will tremble in terror when they see what the Lord Almighty has stretched out his hand to punish them. The people of Egypt will be terrified of Judah every time they are reminded of the fate that the Lord Almighty has prepared for them. When that time comes, the Hebrew language will be spoken in 5 Egyptian cities. The people there will take their oaths in the name of the Lord Almighty. One of the cities will be called City of the Sun. When that time comes, there will be an altar to the Lord in the land of Egypt, and a stone pillar dedicated to him at the Egyptian border. They will be symbols of the Lord Almighty's presence in Egypt. When the people there are oppressed and call out to the Lord for help, he will send someone to rescue them. The Lord will reveal himself to the Egyptian people, and then They will acknowledge and worship him and bring him sacrifices and offerings. They will make solemn promises to him and do what they promise. The Lord will punish the Egyptians, but then he will heal them. They will turn to him, and he will hear their prayers and heal them. When that time comes, there will be a highway between Egypt and Assyria. The people of those two countries will travel to and fro between them, and the two nations will worship together. When that time comes, Israel will rank with Egypt and Assyria, and these three nations will be a blessing to all the world. The Lord Almighty will bless them and say, I will bless you, Egypt, my people, you, Assyria, whom I created, and you, Israel, my chosen people. Amen.
The second reading is from Matthew chapter 5, verses 14 to 16. You are like the light for the whole world. A city built on a hill cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a bowl. Instead, he puts it on the lampstand, where it gives light for everyone in the house. In the same way, your light must shine before people, so that they will see the good things you do and praise your Father in heaven. Amen.
This is week 2 of Bible month. Isaiah talks about light to the world. In 1966, I was on the BBC 6 p.m. Saturday evening news, not being interviewed or named, but in a filming of people protesting outside the United States Air Force Base in Ruislip, protesting against American involvement in the war in Vietnam. I was 18. Over 5 decades later, Nigel and I were visiting Ho Chi Minh City, known to my 18-year-old self as Saigon. Our tour guide was a local man, a few years younger than myself, so he had been a child during the war. Pressed by our tour party into talking about that time, he told us many stories which had involved his family. There were on the one hand stories of heartbreak, hunger, despair, deprivation and death. On the other hand, there were also stories of courage and caring, steadfastness, sharing and sacrifice. In the midst of the political darkness of that time, there was light. This was also Isaiah's contention, that light was there, however politically dark the time seemed. It's easy to overlook that the book of Isaiah wasn't written in a kind of ivory tower of life pootling along in an even manner, but was punching through political conflicts. And those conflicts had their detrimental effects on the lives of ordinary people. Assyria was the current threat, an imperial nation, ruthless, conquering, controlling, and a regime of terror for the people it sought to dominate. So let's do a little bit of looking into that, the political backdrop to the writings of Isaiah and his vision of light to the nations. During much of its early history, Assyria was itself controlled by various powers, and they periodically invaded Mesopotamia, conquered Babylon, and extended their rule over the whole of the Assyrian inhabitants. During the years 1300 to 800 BC, the Assyrian kings engaged in a continual struggle to keep their boundaries intact, with the primary military objective of freeing Assyria from foreign domination. They expanded their territories, and newly annexed areas became part of the Syrian state. Succeeding kings improved upon this policy, increasing the army's power and reputation and building a vast empire that ruled many people with a harshness and a terror previously unsurpassed in history. It was the rise of this Assyrian empire that figures so heavily in the prophecies of Isaiah and the political policies of Israel's neighbours. As the Assyrians, under this new imperialistic dynasty, began to take more vigorous military actions against the tribes that resisted them, they were able to build up a vast ring of vassal countries surrounding the Assyrian homeland. And the cruelty of those soldiers, with rape, torture, and indiscriminate murder, was legendary. And so what of Egypt, that country which had once enslaved the chosen people of Yahweh, that country which was opposed to the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Moses? Still opposed, yes, most certainly yes, but weaker in political and military terms. So let's get to it. Where is the light? Isaiah has an extraordinary vision. 5 cities in Egypt giving allegiance to Yahweh, an altar to the Lord at the heart of Egypt, a great highway between Egypt and Assyria with the worship of the Lord in both nations, and, most amazing of all, the Lord will say, "Blessed be Egypt, my people, Assyria, my handiwork, and Israel, my inheritance." Now, was this just ivory tower thinking, or had Isaiah a sound foundation for that vision? Well, yes, he had. He had that vision on firm, sound foundation from 2 perspectives. And those perspectives intertwine. This is the first, from theology. The God of Israel was the God who, in the theological treatise at the beginning of Genesis, was the one who separated light from darkness. Darkness is there, but so is the light. And what do we read in John's Gospel, written all those centuries later, but in the same theological theme? The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Light does not cease when evil and wickedness roar around to pierce the lives of the innocent with struggle and disaster and bloodshed. There is always light. As our Vietnamese tour guide so eloquently told us, there were on the one hand stories of heartbreak, hunger, despair, deprivation, and death. On the other hand, there were stories of courage, caring, steadfastness, sharing, and sacrifice. And the second thing is from the experience of their history. Time and time again, the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Moses had rescued and redeemed the people. Look at the book of Psalms. As well as the songs of lament, hymns of praise to a creator God, royal and wisdom psalms, there are 15 thanksgiving psalms which tell the stories of a deliverer God. As we read in Isaiah chapter 60 verse 2, "See, darkness covers the earth and thick darkness is over the peoples, but the Lord rises upon you and his glory appears over you." The working out of who God is and what he does are intertwined in those 2 strands, theology and the experience from their history. Now, the second point is this: how are we, who are disciples of the living Lord, going to show forth that light? In chapter 56, Isaiah has an amazing vision that the light is for everyone, not just for the chosen. He focuses on two types of people who were excluded from the temple: foreigners and eunuchs. Isaiah has a vision of all people, including those, being drawn into the embrace of God's family. Now, that would have been a shocking prophecy for those people hearing it and reading it. What? We've got to have those people amongst us. I was privileged recently to be at Bradfield Tut's Clump Vision Day as they seek their way forward for that congregation. A strong theme that emerged was that of hospitality, the welcome that can be geared towards the needs of a community so that the light of Christ can be clearly seen. Therein lays our discipleship and what our mission action plans are all about. As Jesus said, "You are the light of the world. Let your light shine so that your good deeds may be seen and glorify your Father in heaven." I told this rather silly story earlier this year to the folks at Trinity Basingstoke. It goes like this. A chiropodist was on one dark winter's night just preparing to go home when he heard a knock at the door. "Come in," he says. To his surprise, a moth flew in and sat down on the chair in front of him. The moth embarked on a sad and sorry tale of his life's problems, his difficult job, how he'd been so miserable his wife could stand it no longer and had taken refuge at her sister's house. The chiropodist at last got a word in and said, "Look, I work all day with foot problems, corns, bunions, verrucas. What you need is a therapist. What made you come in here?" And the moth replied, "I came in because I saw the light on." It is the firm foundation of Isaiah that the light of God is always on, that the light of God can never be overcome by the darkness, that even in those unexpected places of foreign domination, their light can and will be found. Of course, it is his wondrous words that we hear every Christmas, Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 2, "The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned." We are those people who have seen a great light. The question is, how are we going as individuals and as church communities to bring that light into the open, where it can be seen by those walking in darkness, whatever that darkness may be? Let that not be a question for too long, but let it be a reality that spills over into who we are and what we do in the light of our mission action plans. Let the last words be those of Isaiah, who says in chapter 60, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. See, darkness covers the earth, and thick darkness is over the peoples, but the Lord rises upon you, and his glory appears over you. Nations will come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising up." Lift up your eyes all around and see. They gather together, they come to you. Your sons will come from afar, and your daughters will be nursed at your side. Then you will see and become radiant, and your heart will throb and swell with joy. May the light of Christ be with us all. Amen.